Have you ever been in a meeting where you feel like your thinking just doesn't keep up with the pace that's required? Or maybe you feel like other people are coming up with ideas faster than you can. Well, if that's you, you need to stick around, because in this episode, I'm going to share with you 3 ways that will enable you to think under pressure.
Welcome to the Nils Vesk Show, where every episode is designed to help you think faster, solve problems creatively, and generate breakthrough ideas to catapult your success.
If there was one question I wish my clients would ask me more about is, how do I think under pressure? Why? You might be thinking, well, it's kind of nice and easy to go, well, I've got the luxury of a couple of days to work out or solve a problem. But yeah, I reckon the reality is we just do not have that time. I mean, think about it. The number of times that you're in a meeting, the decision or the ideas, the solutions need to be made right there and then. And taking the time out to think for a day or two, we just do not have that luxury. We need to be able to think, but we need to be able to do it rapidly in order to come up with those commercial solutions. And one of the ways that we can make those things happen faster is, the first thing, number one, is around having frameworks. Now, don't freak out, because frameworks can sound complex and yet actually it could be rather simple. So by a framework, I might mean, do you have a model or an approach or a process that you can go about and draw upon consistently to solve a problem, knowing that it's going to work? So let me give you an example. When I'm often put on the spot, and it happens a lot more than you can imagine, you walk into a meeting or a boardroom and the CEO goes, all right, let's see if we can test out this guy. And they throw you a problem, and right there and then you've got to have a framework to do. And a framework that we use, and we share about this a lot in our Idea Maverick program, is that usually all problems have 3 main causes. And why causes is so important, more often than not, we actually spend our time trying to solve the symptoms. And yet, I'm sure we all know, every symptom is usually driven by a cause. And the first one of these real causes is what I would call behavioural. More often than not, a problem is caused, whether it's an internal behavioural problem or a behaviour from a customer. And if we can identify what's causing that behavior, or the 3 types of causes to a behavior, then we can actually do something about it. So in my mind, I'm going, is this a behavioral issue? And by that, I might go, is it a motivational problem? Is it something that relates to the customer or our team's ability? Or does it relate to something like a prompt? What's prompting someone to make that behavior? Or is a prompt missing? And what I've effectively shared there is, okay, cause, is it a behavior? Is it something to do with motivation, inspiration, or their drive? Is it something to do with their ability, or something to do with their prompt? And really quickly, I can start to assess in my head, is it a behavioral issue? Yes or no? What might be some of those cause components behind it? Next up, we have environmental. Now, don't worry, I'm not necessarily talking about trees. I'm talking about the space and place, whether it's the workplace or the play space the event is actually happening. Because the environment that we're in, the work environment or the context of where this problem is happening, can often have a big impact. So to give you a quick little example, I remember working with a team where they found that their customer service organization, I mean, they had, I think, about 150 of them, they were making mistakes. And when we looked at their space, the environment, we worked out that they all just had one screen, and on that one screen next to it, in their little cubicles, everyone had all of these post-it notes, because they had so many reminders of things that they wanted to do. And the simple solution that came out of it actually was more around people, just the screens are too small. If we can give them 2 screens, we can split that and have those reminders or those systems and processes in place that they can quickly grab and pull up, and they can have a scripted conversation around it, or scripted advice, or here's the work through when this problem comes up. It was a simple fix, but we needed to think about the space. They were thinking it was more about the people don't want to help people. Does that make sense? So think about that. Is it something around the environment where people are working? And the third thing that can be really useful then, so we've spoken about, what have we spoken about? We had first around behaviour, then we had the environment. The next part are environmental cause. The next one is logistical causes. So that could be around the processes that we're using. Is there a process or is there no process? Is the process outdated or is the process broken? Do we need to think about reinventing that process in order to make things happen? Because quite often, and I'm still surprised about this, and I've worked with some giant companies, you'll be surprised how many people really should have a process in place and they don't. Now, a little bit of if you're in your mind, you're going, process is boring. I get that. But the reason why processes are boring is usually we're using something that was invented 10 or 15 years ago. And a process really is about how do we make sure that there are no stop gaps, that we don't make mistakes, that everything is seamless to make that happen. So again, really quickly I could think about, when was the last time we actually had a process to help us deal with that one? Or, hey, can you tell us, when that process was first created? All right, probably about 7 years ago. Or who invented that process? Oh, that was Anita. Who's she? Oh, yeah, she left a few years ago. So can you start to see how having those frameworks up there can enable you very quickly to look at solving a problem around that. Now, your framework could change. You could use ours, you could borrow it, but you start to get a sense of how a framework can enable you to walk into a room with that ability to solve a problem. The second thing that can make us almost indispensable and be able to think on our feet is the ability to generate ideas. And there is no better way to generate ideas than having a prompt up your sleeve or in your brain. And by a prompt, what I mean is, let's say, for example, if I was to ask you, what's the first thing that comes into your mind when I say the colour yellow? Now, I don't know what it's going to be for you. It could be sun, it could be daffodils, it could be sunflowers, it could be a yellow submarine. But your brain is an association machine. It can't help but start to come up with ideas that relate to that prompt. The problem that we usually have when it comes to coming up with ideas is that we are stuck on this level of where the problem started, not necessarily at a fresh 30,000 foot view perspective to enable us to get with fresh ideas. What we need are some prompts that enable us to start to think outside of the box. A prompt could be, is there anything we could combine to help solve this problem or help us to get better results? Is there anything we could reverse? Could we substitute this with that? What would happen if we were to add this or to adapt that or to multiply it or to, substitute? You get the idea. And what I have is just a mental database, actually I have an acronym of prompts that I use in my brain that enable me or to generate ideas, or it gives me the ability to ask other people what they could do. So I might go, okay, Katya, is there anything that we could substitute in terms of a step or a component that might help us to make this process better or more seamless? Oh yes, of course, we can do this. You get the idea. So prompting things. When you have prompts up there, it just becomes so much easier to generate ideas. And yes, we've got an awesome prompt that we talk about in our Idea Maverick program, so feel free to check that out. Okay, third thing that we can do to help us be cool and calm under pressure is to generate or have what we would say a very strong idea muscle. Now, I've used this just a moment before I spoke about using prompts. And while it's good to have a prompt, what we want to be able to do is to develop our idea muscle. Now, there is a bit of a myth that we are either born creative or not. It's either you have blonde hair and blue eyes or you're just not creative. And that is a total furphy. We were all creative when we were kids. I mean, think about it. You probably used to combine things you shouldn't have done. You probably remove things. You were experimenting all the time. And then unfortunately, education came along, institutions, organizations, and we shifted much more to a risk-averse, black or white thinking, and we've been beaten to death to not be creative. We just need to trigger it. And one of the ways that we can do that is by developing our idea muscle. So rather than trying to come up with one idea, look at trying to generate 20 ideas. And as counterintuitive as that might sound, the more ideas that we have, the better the end solution will be. Because trying to get the perfect idea won't happen thinking for the perfect idea. We need to just lay it out. Get 20 ideas out of your head. It's like you're flushing the toilet. Get those ideas out. And often the best ideas happen around ideas 16 to 20. So here's a super hack that I do. When I start my day, I will pull out a blank sheet of paper. Yes, paper and pen, because there's some research around how it activates the brain in a different way to typing it out. Trust me on this one. You could use a smart device, but I would really recommend pen and paper or pencil and paper. And what I do is, what are 20 ideas to solve X? And I insert the blank. One day it might be, what are 20 ideas I can do to reactivate some older clients, or 20 ideas to make our processes in our company better, 20 ideas to help our company or our clients get better results. And I put a timer, it's a 5-minute timer, and I just generate those ideas. Now trust me, it's not easy at first. Once you do that, give you a 2-week challenge, try doing it every weekday. For 2 weeks, you will start to see how much easier it becomes. And developing that idea muscle is fundamental, being able to think under pressure, because you're not worried about coming up with an idea. You've got some prompts and you know that you've got the idea muscle to generate ideas. And people will be going, their jaws will drop as you start to come up with those ideas. Trust me, it really does work. Okay, so there are 3 things that you can do to help you think under pressure. One little bonus, and that is to breathe in through your nose. Now, sometimes when I do podcasts like this, people get a little bit annoyed because they can hear me breathing in through my nose, and I don't eliminate that sound because there is a technique behind this. One of the challenges that we have when we are talking or when we're thinking or when we're under pressure is that we start to breathe more from the upper respiratory area, up from our chest and our lungs, and we get what's called poor vagal tone. The vagus nerve is a central nerve that goes through the front of the body, through the abdominals up there, and there's been a lot of research that when we're under pressure, the vagal tone, the vagal nerve becomes under pressure, and we don't hear as well, we don't comprehend as things well, and we don't think as well. Our listening skills go down, and our reasoning and our logic goes out the door. We become more stressed and more anxious. Breathing in through the nose helps to get air down into the belly and then up through there, and it starts to stimulate and calm down that vagus nerve, so we are more cool, calm, and collected under pressure. And if you want an example of this, my sport, as crazy as it might sound, is hang gliding. I love flying in competitions. I've represented Australian World Championships, and it is a dangerous sport, and people unfortunately do die. There is a lot of pressure, and whenever I'm under pressure and I'm feeling something, my legs are getting tight, I'm feeling tense, I breathe into my belly, I breathe in through my nose. And if you're having a presentation, another little tip here, breathe in through your nose. It will force you to pause, and it will help you to be calmer, and it gives people time to comprehend what you're saying. There we go. So you can hear me exaggerating that breathing in now, but you get the idea. So my friends, hopefully that's been really useful. Please let me know if you want more of this stuff. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. And if you want to find out more about some of these techniques that I'm sharing, please check us out at ideamaverick.com. And also, if you want a checklist to help you come up with brilliant ideas or other people to facilitate them, go to ideamaverick.com/checklist for a great checklist which can help to accelerate your career. Thanks again for tuning in, listening or watching, And if you love it, please share the love, give us a like or a thumbs up or something like that. And we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for coming.